Were you surprised by the results in the battleground or swing states in the recent election? You shouldn't have been. Political polling, for all its usefulness, is useless in battleground states. In political polling, we measure the level of support for the various candidates. But that's not what we care about. What we care about is the difference in that level of support. So when the poll reports its margin of error, that's not the margin of error that you want to look at. What you need is the margin of error for the difference, for the lead of your candidate, or the lead of the candidate you don't like. That can be represented by this simple formula. We're going to look at 1.96, because that's going to give us a couple of standard deviations, times the square root of the variance, right? The variance in this situation is P1, which is the decimal representation of the percent voting for one candidate, such as 50% would be 0.5. P2, obviously, the percent voting for the other candidate, and then we're going to subtract the difference of those two squared, and then we divide by n minus 1, where n is the number of poll respondents. In a battleground state, pretty much by definition, P1 minus P2 is going to be close to 0, and you square it, it gets even closer to 0. And because the US is basically a two-party system, P1 plus P2 is going to be pretty close to 1. And given that you have at least a few hundred, if not a few thousand respondents in your poll or collection of polls, n minus 1 might as well be n. And while we're at it, 1.96, let's just call that 2. So what we're looking at is basically a margin of error on the difference between two candidates as being 2 times the square root of 1 over the number of people polled. Even if you aggregated multiple polls and got to 10,000 respondents, that margin of error would be plus or minus 2 percentage points. And given that we're specifically talking about battleground states, the difference is probably less than 2 percentage points. So no matter how much polling you do, any battleground state is a coin flip. Or maybe it's decidedly going one way or the other, but you can't tell.